Need a little luxury in your life? That's why I recently treated myself to a staycation at the Inn at 500 Capital. Whether you're looking for a romantic getaway, a special celebration, or just a break from routine, you're going to love their Four Diamond Boutique experience with gorgeous rooms, penthouses, and suites right in the heart of downtown Boise. You'll be greeted with a complimentary drink on arrival, have access to free shuttle service, and even your pet is welcome. And here's an insider tip: book more than one night and save with their weekend escape rate. Book your stay now at inat500.com. Hey everyone! Right now, Boise Weekly is holding their annual contest highlighting the best of the best in our city. And we need your help. If this show helps you feel more connected and in the know, please nominate us in the Best Podcast category. It takes just a minute, and we'll put a link in the show notes to the nomination form. Thanks for your support, Boise. Today on CityCast Boise, one of Nampa's biggest development battles just took a surprising turn. Faced with community pushback, the local family behind this proposal listened, adapted, and unveiled a plan that not only addresses concerns, but also honors their Japanese-American heritage. What does this growth mean for Nampa, and how does it compare to Boise's growing pains? It's Tuesday, March 18th. I'm Lindsay Van Allen, and this is what Boise's talking about. Nick Rosenberger from the Idaho Statesman is joining us today to talk about a local city council meeting that brought people to tears, but for surprising reasons. So thanks so much for coming back on the show, Nick.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
There's a development that recently got the green light in Nampa, and the story behind it is actually incredibly heartwarming. I don't know if that's a description I have ever used for a mixed-use housing proposal before, but what can you tell me about this development? Who owns it? Where is it at? Just kind of paint a picture for us.
Yeah, so the project is in southwest Nampa, right next to Lake Lowell. It's from Nampa's Keto family, who have been involved in the community for a very, very long time. Kind of the patriarch of their family is Scott Keto, who's run a dental business for a long time. They own about 260 acres of farmland right to the east of Lake Lowell. And so what they're hoping to do there is build a couple hundred homes, redevelop the old 70-acre Bowman gravel pit, build a 5-acre pond, pumpkin patch, corn maze, vineyard, an expansion of their lavender fields that they have over there, and a Japanese garden as well to kind of commemorate their family history as well.
So it sounds like there's a lot of different elements to this development proposal, but how many units of housing would it bring to the community, and what kind of housing would it be?
Yeah, so it would be mostly single-family homes, so that kind of traditional standalone homes. And they were really focusing on that to kind of keep the more, I guess, spread out or agricultural centric focus for the region. So it would be 189 homes kind of spread out and kind of spaced apart. No apartments, no condos, nothing like that. I think the community was really opposed to that sort of development. And originally they were opposed to the entire development, regardless if they were single family homes or not.
Yeah, I want to dive into that. So spoiler alert, not to upset anyone, but this proposal did end up getting unanimous approval from the Nampa City Council. But initially there was opposition to this project. What were citizens concerned about? And were their concerns addressed in the final proposal?
Yeah. So back in, I believe, November, the Keto family had a planning and zoning commission hearing. And that's a public hearing, and a lot of residents, a lot of neighbors turned out in opposition to the project. They were worried about the wildlife refuge there. They were worried about water runoff into Lake Lowell. They were concerned about traffic and infrastructure issues. There was a really long list of things that people just didn't want to see happen. There's generally a good amount of opposition for any kind of development, especially large-scale development like this, which is, 260 acres. And a lot of those concerns were common things that you see in Boise and Caldwell, Meridian, Eagle. Pretty much anywhere you go, you're going to see those issues. But in kind of the months between the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council hearing, I think the Keto family did a ton of work, a ton of outreach with the community. They were meeting with people who had concerns, spending hours talking with them, giving them a tour of the property, showing them what they were planning to do there. And I think that swayed a lot of hearts. And what we saw at the city council meeting recently was that a lot of people showed up in support of the project, which is a wild reversal and something you never really see in the growth and development sphere.
This episode is sponsored by Babbel. Are you holding back on foreign travel plans this year because you're afraid of the language gap? I'm not, because I have Babbel. I'm David Plotz, the CEO of CityCast, and I'm learning Spanish on Babbel, getting ready for a trip to Mexico City. Babbel is the language learning app that gets you talking. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons, handcrafted by over 200 language experts, get you to begin speaking your new language in 3 weeks or at whatever pace you choose. Babbel's tips and tools are inspired by the real-life stuff you actually need when communicating. With a focus on conversation, you'll be ready to talk wherever you go. Babbel has given me great lessons on getting directions, ordering in a restaurant, and making plans. And of all the things I'm doing in Mexico City, I'm probably most excited about the soccer game we're going to. So I was excited to learn how to cheer from Babbel. That'll be me you'll hear yelling, "Fuerza Tigres! Fuerza Tigres!" With over 16 million subscriptions sold, Babbel's 14 award-winning language courses are backed by a 20-day money-back guarantee. Let's get more of you talking in a new language. Babbel is gifting our listeners 60% off subscriptions at babbel.com/citycast. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/citycast. Spelled BABBEL.com/citycast. Babbel.com/citycast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Building a portfolio with Fidelity Basket Portfolios is kind of like making a sandwich. It's as simple as picking your stocks and ETFs, sort of like your meats and other toppings, and managing it as one big, juicy investment. Now that's pretty good. Learn more at fidelity.com/baskets. Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC. Member NYSE SIPC.
It seems like with every development proposal, there are concerns about infrastructure and how growth is going to be managed and making sure this new growth doesn't overpower our current infrastructure. But there was a lot of emphasis and concern about the bird and wildlife refuge in that area. How was that issue addressed within the proposal?
So there was a lot of concern about the Deer Flat National Wildlife Refuge, which is the only national wildlife refuge in Southwest Idaho. There's thousands and thousands of birds that migrate through that area every single year. You can find tons and tons of animals out there. If you go for a walk around Lake Lowell or Deer Flat, you're going to see a bunch of animals. And so there was a lot of concern that developing so close to the refuge would pose some difficulties for the animals. If there was car fumes or light pollution, there was some concerns that it could affect the wildlife population there. I think the Quitos likely addressed that by, designing the development in such a way that it kind of elevated those concerns so that there would be potentially connections into Deer Flat National Wildlife Refuge. There wouldn't be, any fences along the property into the wildlife refuge that would prevent, deer or whatnot from kind of free roaming and free access. At the city council meeting, there was a concern about whether the cherry blossoms that are proposed for the site would be poisonous to animals. Charles Quito, Scott Quito's son, said that he would work with those concerns and try and address those. He hadn't heard about that before, but that is a decent point.
And I want to talk about the Quito family themselves because they have a long and rich and heartbreaking history in Idaho. What's their connection to Nampa?
Yeah, so Scott Quito, as I mentioned before, he's kind of run Quito and Lovelace Dentistry in Nampa for a really long time. They're a Japanese-American family. They originally owned a farm in Portland. And during World War II, after Pearl Harbor, the government moved Japanese-Americans to internment camps or concentration camps. And so the Quito family lost their farm in Portland, were forced to move to Nissa and basically work on the farm. Once the war ended, they moved to the Nampa area and started the farm. And there was a lot of Japanese Americans that were farming in Southwest Idaho around that time. And Scott Quito said during the city council meeting that a lot of people didn't really like Japanese Americans after the war. And his family continued to push through. They continued to work the land. They continued to be involved in the community, and they passed the farm down the generations to where they are now. A lot of those Japanese farms are disappearing, and there's not a ton of them left. And so part of this proposal, part of this development would build a Japanese garden that would kind of celebrate this Japanese American history in the Treasure Valley in Southwest Idaho, and kind of celebrate those Japanese American farmers who found a home here, who found a community after the war.
And can you tell me more about the design of this Japanese botanical garden? Like how big it will be, where it will be in the development, what all will be included?
Yeah. So the Japanese botanical garden would have a lot of plants and foliage and stuff from the area. There's a proposed 5-acre pond as well, a bridge, and it would kind of interconnect with the rest of the property as well, where they have, cherry blossoms and lavender fields. And, they are hoping to host events as well. So like a lavender festival they've held for 4 years, and they're hoping as well to do a cherry blossom festival likely as well. So I think it would just be a really pretty area that folks could enjoy and just to be a part of the community and kind of a cultural center.
Hi, this is Javon, your Blinds.com design consultant.
Oh, wow. A real person.
Yep. I'm here to help with everything from selecting the perfect window treatments to...
Well, I've got a complicated project.
No problem. I can even help schedule a professional measure and install. We can also send you samples fast and free.
I just might have to do more.
Whatever you need.
So the first room we're looking at is for...
Shop Blinds.com now and save up to 45% site-wide. Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Chronic migraine, 15 or more headache days a month, each lasting 4 hours or more, can make me feel like a spectator in my own life.
Botox, onabotulinum toxin A, prevents headaches in adults with chronic migraine. It's not for those with 14 or fewer headache days a month. It's the #1 prescribed branded chronic migraine preventive treatment.
Prescription Botox is injected by your doctor. Effects of Botox may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away, as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness can be signs of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Side effects may include allergic reactions, neck and injection site pain, fatigue, and headache. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Don't receive Botox if there's a skin infection. Tell your doctor your medical history, muscle or nerve conditions, including ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects.
Why wait? Ask your doctor, visit BotoxChronicMigraine.com, or call 1-800-44-BOTOX to learn more.
It really seems like the Keto family took a lot of time and put a lot of thought into creating a development that really enriches and benefits the community. And I do think it's really incredible how they are working to turn some of the darker moments in U.S. history into something so beautiful and unique for Nampa. Did that feeling come across at the city council meeting?
Yeah, absolutely. So there was about an hour and a half or so of people that were commenting, city councilors talking, and a lot of them mentioned or spoke about how important this was to the community and to kind of cherish and celebrate the legacy that the Keto family had, that Japanese Americans have had in Southwest Idaho. A couple of the counselors were very in support of the project. One city councilor started crying when she was talking about how it felt like this would be a legacy site and that it was incredibly important for the city and for the community. And from my own personal experience covering growth and development, covering city council meetings, planning and zoning, design review commissions, I don't think I've ever seen that. I don't think I've ever seen that much support for a project before. And so it was pretty, I guess, eye-opening or pretty shocking to see the amount of support that everyone had for this project, especially after the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting back in November. And so, yeah, I think it absolutely came across for folks.
Yeah, I've been to my fair share of city council meetings, and I don't think I've ever seen a meeting where people are, one, crying, screaming, yes, never really crying, and not like heartwarming, like sharing in the joy of this project, tears. I've never seen that. What were people saying about this project in the meeting, or what were they saying about this development?
I think for a lot of people, they felt that it reflected their values. A lot of people were saying that if the Ketos had sold the property, there's a good chance that some really dense subdivision could have come in. Someone could throw up a ton of townhomes and just make it a really dense neighborhood. And instead, what the Quitos presented was something that kind of cherished the region, the agricultural history of the region, connected in with Lake Lowell and the wildlife refuge, and kind of tried their best to reflect Nampa and Nampa's history. And I think people were really, really appreciative of that versus a development that just tries to squeeze as many houses onto a plot of land as possible, which we do need houses. We are in the middle of a housing crisis. But I think people were really, really appreciative that this was something that they wanted to see rather than just another cookie cutter subdivision that you can find anywhere else.
Yeah, not just a development where the developer is completely focused on like, let's fit as many units in as possible, maximize profits. It really does sound like a very thoughtful, community-based development. And sorry, I know I already spoiled it for everyone, but it was a unanimous vote in favor of development moving forward. So, Nick, what's next for this proposal?
Yeah, so there's still a long way to go. Approval is kind of the first step in most development things. So they'll need building permits and they'll need to work through some infrastructure issues that were brought up. They're still trying to figure out exactly what they're trying to put into the Bowman gravel pit. They've agreed on certain things that they don't want to go in there. So, you're not going to get a vape shop. You're not going to get an amphitheater there. A lot of folks were upset that the gravel pit could turn into something they didn't want to see. And the Quitos listened to it and agreed to those and are trying to find something that fits in with the community. So there's still some work to be done there. And then the very, very long process of actually building the thing. It takes a while. Development is a long-term game. So it'll probably be a couple years, but it's an exciting thing to see.
And I'm really curious, you've covered development throughout the Treasure Valley. What are your thoughts on the difference between growth in Nampa versus in Boise? In what ways are they different, or maybe are they really similar in their approach to growth and development?
There's definitely differences. So Boise, as most people will probably know, passed a zoning code rewrite, and that went live in December of 2023. And that really focused on increasing density and building more like multifamily units, so apartments or townhouses or condos, allowing more ADUs. And for now, Nampa is still a much smaller city than Boise, and it still has a lot longer to go until it kind of hits that point where it might need to start focusing on bigger multifamily projects. But for now, they are really focused on single family homes. Everyone wants their yard and their garage. And those are two different, I guess, approaches to development. I would say Nampa is still a little bit younger than Boise in that regard. But the city leaders have acknowledged that they only have a finite amount of space. So it's interesting to watch as the city develops and as it grows. And you're seeing pockets of development as well. So Nampa specifically, it's growing more southwest toward Lake Lowell and the National Wildlife Refuge. So this is just a piece of the much, much larger picture that Nampa is kind of growing southwest and also to the northeast as well, which is kind of an interesting little tidbit.
Yeah, kind of spreading in opposite directions, it seems like.
Yeah, and I will say it's also spreading northwest kind of towards Caldwell as well. Caldwell is building south, and then Nampa is kind of building north as well. So eventually I see those two as kind of overlapping, just as, Boise and Meridian basically overlap at this point, where you cross the street and you're in one city.
Slowly but surely, we're becoming a mega city.
Yep, exactly.
So before we wrap up, so many development proposals in the Treasure Valley aim to make this transition from, a more rural landscape to homes and businesses, and they face opposition. People who move here, people who live here, part of the reason that they want to live here is it is more rural. People want their open spaces, like you said, their single family homes, being able to go to recreational areas. And it kind of becomes the classic, they know we need development, but it becomes the kind of not in my backyard, NIMBY, like, of course we need development, but not near me. Is that attitude happening less and less as demand for housing grows, or does it really just depend on the project and where it is?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's getting any less present. I would say it depends on the project. I mean, you saw NIMBYism with the Quito Families project when it was at planning and zoning. Everyone hated it. No one wanted it in their backyard. And you see a lot of those concerns that you see in other kind of quote unquote NIMBY arguments, concerns about traffic, concerns about infrastructure, concerns about, the impact on the environment. And, you see those arguments in every city, in every town, in Idaho. I would say no developer is immune to those arguments. I think there is certain things that they can do to kind of address some of those concerns. I think the Ketos did a really fantastic job of that, of meeting with the residents and neighbors and people who were concerned and addressing their concerns, listening to them and kind of trying to work their concerns into their proposals. It is more complicated in a city like Boise where it's bigger. And with the new zoning code, I think a lot of people were upset that, their backyard just got turned into a new zone that basically allows for a 3-story building that they don't want. And so I think there is some conflict there. But, as a city, Boise's changing. And I think that's the one constant in life is that there's going to be change. And I think that's something that's difficult for people to accept sometimes. But it is something to just keep in mind that things are going to change whether you like it or not.
Well, Nick, thank you so much. There was a lot of really interesting tidbits and details. So thank you for coming on the show to break it down for us and let us know about new developments happening in Nampa.
Yeah, absolutely. Will do. Thanks for having me.
That's all for today here on CityCast Boise. If you enjoyed the podcast, don't forget to leave us a review. It helps other people find the show too. We'll be back tomorrow morning with the Elder Millennials Guide to Tree Fort. See you then.